Welcome back to the deep dive. I am genuinely excited about this one because, frankly, today we are tackling a subject that I think every single person listening has a very strong opinion on, whether they realize it or not.
Oh, for sure.
It is a creature that has dominated our nightmares, our movie screens, and our museum halls for over a century. We are talking about the king of the tyrant lizards.
The one and only Tyrannosaurus rex.
Exactly. The ultimate dinosaur, the
Yep.
pop culture icon. And I feel like with T-Rex, there are really two versions of this animal, There's the movie version, the monster that roars in the rain and chases jeeps at like 40 miles per hour. And then there's the reality. And the reality seems to be changing literally every time I open a newsfeed.
It really is. It is fascinating because this animal was discovered and named way back in 1905 by Henry Fairfield Osborn.
Wow, that long ago.
Yeah, over a century. You would think, logically, that after 120 years of studying the most famous fossil on Earth, we would have it all figured out. We'd have the manual written,
Yeah.
case closed. But we are arguably learning more now in just the last decade than we did in the entire century prior. We aren't just looking at a movie monster anymore. We are looking at an incredibly complex biological machine.
A biological machine. I really like that phrasing. It implies systems, mechanics, inputs and outputs, not just a big scary lizard.
That's it, exactly.
So our mission today is to basically strip away the Hollywood myths. Sorry, Jurassic Park, I love you, you changed my life, but you lied to us. And rebuild this animal from the ground up based on the latest bone, skin, and chemical evidence.
It's a tall order, but we can do it.
We're going to talk about how big it really was, the whole feathers versus scales war, which I have so many questions about.
Oh, that's a good one.
The lips debate.
Which is a very heated, very passionate debate right now in paleontological circles. You would not believe the arguments.
I can imagine. And the identity crisis regarding its babies, which is a drama all on its own. But let's start with the basics. When we say ultimate dinosaur, we are talking about size. We all know T-Rex was big, but how big are we talking? And more importantly, how do we actually know?
It is massive, and it's not just about length, it's about bulk. It's about mass. For a long time, the absolute gold standard was the specimen nicknamed Sue.
Ah, Sue. The celebrity of the Field Museum in Chicago. I have seen Sue in person. It is genuinely awe-inspiring. You feel very, very small standing next to that mountain.
You really do. Sue is specimen FMNHPR 2081. Discovered back in 1990 by Sue Hendrickson in the Hell Creek Formation of South Dakota. That skeleton is about 12.3 to 12.4 meters long.
So what's that in feet for us?
That's roughly 40 to 41 feet, and standing at the hips, Sue is about 3.8 meters or 12 to 13 feet tall.
That is a two-story building walking around. It's hard to wrap your head around that scale. But Sue isn't just big, Sue was old, right? That was part of the story.
Yes, that's a huge part of why Sue is so important. We can look at the growth rings in the bones, a bit like tree rings, and Sue lived to be about 28 to 33 years old.
Wow.
And that might not sound old to us, but for a T-Rex, that is ancient. That is a geriatric dinosaur. It suggests that if they survived the incredibly dangerous teenage years, they could get truly, truly massive. But recently, there's been a challenger to the throne.
Ooh, a bigger, badder Rex.
Potentially. There's a specimen nicknamed Scotty located at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. Its catalog number RSM P2523.8.
Scotty.
While the length is comparable to Sue, around 13 meters, so a little bit longer, the mass estimation is where it gets really interesting. Using calculations based on the circumference of the femur, Scotty is estimated to come in at 8.87 tons.
Nearly 9 tons. Okay, hold on. It dropped a number there. 8.87 tons. That is nearly 20,000 pounds. How exactly do we know that? We don't have a scale big enough, and Scotty is just a pile of rocks now. Are we just guessing?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's a great one. For a long time, we were kind of guessing, using scale models and dunking them in water to measure displacement, that sort of thing.
That sounds very low tech.
It was,
Yeah.
but the science has gotten much more rigorous. We now use a method based on the minimum circumference of the femur, the thigh bone.
Why the femur? Why is that the key?
Because gravity doesn't negotiate, it's a physics problem. There is a mathematical limit to how much weight a bone of a certain thickness can support before it just snaps under the strain. By measuring the narrowest point of the thigh bone, which carries the most load, we can calculate the maximum weight that bone was built to carry during life.
So it's engineering. You're reverse engineering the chassis to figure out the payload. It's like looking at the axle on a truck and figuring out its max load.
Precisely. That's a perfect analogy. And when you apply that math to Scotty, you get this massive number that's significantly heavier than Sue, who comes in around 8.4 tons.
Yeah.
So while lengths might be similar, Scotty seems to be the heavyweight champion.
The heavyweight champion. But you mentioned something interesting there. The difference between them. Does that mean there were different builds of T-Rex?
It seems so. Here's the nuance. Scotty and Sue represent what we call the robust morph of T-Rex. They are the linebackers. We have other adult skeletons that are much lighter, more gracile.
Gracile. So skinnier.
Skinnier, yeah.
More slenderly built.
Is that a gender thing? Like, are the females the linebackers and the males are the wide receivers?
That's the leading theory, yes. We suspect T-Rex displayed sexual dimorphism where the females were the larger, heavier sex. It makes biological sense. They likely needed the extra bulk for egg production and laying, which is a huge metabolic investment.
Makes sense.
But, and this is a big but, without a time machine or a very specific type of bone tissue, it's really hard to prove which skeleton is a boy and which is a girl. Okay, we'll get to that specific bone tissue later because I know that's a game changer for identifying the moms. But sticking to the size, if Scotty is 9 tons, that biological machine has to be built differently. You can't just scale up a raptor or an Allosaurus.
No, you absolutely can't. The square cube law prohibits that.
Explain that for me.
So as you double an animal's height, its surface area increases by a factor of 4, but its volume, and therefore its weight increases by a factor of 8. So your weight increases much, much faster than your structural strength.
So you get crushed under your own weight if you're not careful.
Exactly. This is why T-Rex looks so barrel-chested and thick compared to other theropods. It had to become a distinct physiological type just to stand up and walk around. It's not just a big lizard, it's a gravity-defying feat of biological engineering.
That is a lot of animal coming at you.
Yeah.
And the business end of that animal is, of course, the mouth. Now, I've heard this phrase used to describe their teeth. Lethal bananas.
Yes, lethal bananas. It sounds funny and people laugh when they hear it, but it's actually a perfect description of the shape and size.
Is that accurate?
It really is. If you look at other carnivorous dinosaurs like the raptors or even the giant shark-toothed dinosaurs like Carcharodontosaurus or Giganotosaurus, their teeth are flat and blade-like. They're like steak knives.
Designed for slicing.
Right, for slicing through flesh, creating bleeding wounds. But T-Rex is completely different. T-Rex teeth are thick. They are incredibly robust. They have a D-shaped cross-section. They are reinforced with these ridges on the rear surface. They aren't just for cutting. They're designed to resist snapping under immense pressure.
Resist snapping. So they're expecting a lot of resistance. Like they're not just biting into steak, they're biting into brick.
Exactly. They're built for biting and pulling, and most importantly, crushing. This animal engaged in a behavior we call osteophagy.
Osteophagy.
Literally bone eating. Unlike those slicing predators who might strip meat off the bone, T-Rex was biting through the bone. The largest tooth found so far, including the root, is 30.5 centimeters long.
Wait. 30 centimeters.
That's 12 inches. A foot-long tooth.
A foot-long tooth rooted in a skull that I assume had to be incredibly strong to support that kind of action. You can't put a heavy-duty drill bit in a cheap plastic drill.
You absolutely can't, and that's where the skull mechanics get unique. In many other theropods, there's a bit of flexibility or kinesis between the skull bones.
Kinesis. Like a snake's jaw.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
A much more limited version. It helps them absorb shock and not break their own faces when they bite down on struggling prey. But in T-Rex, the nasal bones, the ones along the snout, were fused. Solid.
Fused, so no wiggle room at all.
No wiggle room. It creates this incredibly strong, rigid structure. It turns the skull into a solid hammer. It allowed T-Rex to deliver the strongest bite force of any terrestrial animal ever. We're talking estimates between 35,000 and 57,000 newtons.
Okay, I'm not a physicist. What is 57,000 newtons in real-world terms? Is that a car crash? What am I picturing here?
Think about a modern saltwater crocodile, one of the strongest bites today. Its bite is around 16,000 newtons. T-Rex is over 3 times that. It's enough force to literally explode fresh bone. It's hydraulic. It allowed them to access bone marrow, which is a super rich nutrient source other predators just couldn't get to.
It's like being the only one in the cafeteria with a can opener. Everyone else is just scraping the outside of the can.
That is the perfect way to put it. It had a key to a pantry nobody else could open.
So if you're hiding from this thing...
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about hiding, because this is the biggest movie myth of all time. Don't move. He can't see us if we don't move.
Yeah, please don't try that if you ever invent a time machine. That is a fatal, fatal error.
So the frog DNA vision is a lie. The vision based on movement.
It's a complete fabrication for the movie. A brilliant plot device, but terrible science. Studies on the skull shape of T-Rex show that it had a very wide back of the skull but a narrow snout. This positioning angled the eyes forward.
Giving it depth perception.
Excellent depth perception. We call it binocular vision. T-Rex had a binocular range of about 55 degrees. To put that in perspective, that is better than modern hawks.
Better than a hawk. A hawk's vision is legendary.
Better than a hawk. And it's not just the depth perception. One study by Kent Stevens estimated that T-Rex had a visual acuity 13 times that of a human.
13 times. So it could see me from miles away, clear as day.
Stevens estimated the limiting far point, that's the point where you can distinguish an object from the horizon, as far as 6 kilometers away.
6 kilometers. That's nearly 4 miles. So if I'm standing perfectly still 3 miles away, it sees me, no question.
It sees you clearly. And even if you hid behind a rock, it would smell you.
Right, the nose. That was another one of its supposed superpowers.
It really was. We can tell from the skull because the holes for the nerves, the foramina, are preserved. The olfactory bulbs and the olfactory nerves in T-Rex were huge relative to its brain size. We're talking capability comparable to modern vultures or turkey vultures.
And they could smell a carcass from a mile up.
Easily. It could sniff out a carcass or a human from huge distances. It was sampling the air constantly.
Okay, so if I'm really, really quiet, I hold my breath, I don't move, I'm hiding behind a very large, non-smelly rock.
It would probably hear you, or more accurately, feel you. It had a very long cochlea in the inner ear.
The cochlea. That's the spiral part of the inner ear.
That's the one, and its length is important.
Yeah.
We scanned the inner ear of T-Rex, specifically the cochlear duct. It's incredibly long for an animal of its size. In nature, a long cochlea generally correlates with the ability to hear very low-frequency sounds.
Sounds below what we can hear.
Exactly. Sounds below the range of human hearing, known as infrasound.
So it's not hearing a tweet-tweet, it's hearing a rumble. I usually associate that with whales or elephants.
That's exactly the right comparison. Think about when a heavy truck drives by your house and you feel it in your chest before you really hear it. That is the world T-Rex lived in. This suggests they might have communicated over vast distances with low-frequency booming calls, much like elephants do today across the savannah.
That changes the horror movie aspect entirely. It's not a high-pitched screeching roar, it's a vibration that you feel in your bones from 3 miles away.
Precisely. And it also changes how they hunted. If a triceratops herd is moving 5 miles away, their footsteps create low-frequency seismic waves in the ground. T-Rex could likely hear the movement of prey through its feet and jaw long before it could see them.
It's a seismic detector. Walking around?
A biological seismograph, yes. It was tuned into the heavy movements of its world.
Okay, so it sees better than a hawk, smells like a vulture, and hears infrasound. It's not a dumb brute either, is it? The brain was supposed to be pretty big.
Not at all. It had one of the largest brains, proportionally, of any non-avian dinosaur. Its encephalization quotient, or EQ, which is a rough measure of brain size relative to body mass, is roughly in the range of a chimpanzee.
A chimpanzee? Seriously?
Now, reptile and mammal brains are structured differently, so it's not a one-to-one intelligence comparison. We're not saying it was doing puzzles, but it indicates a high degree of sensory processing and complex behavior. It wasn't just a walking mouth.
That is terrifyingly impressive.
Yeah.
So we've established it's a sensory powerhouse.
Right.
Now let's talk about what it looked like. Because for a while there, the pendulum swung really hard toward giant fluffy chicken.
The Fluffy Rex era. It was a very popular artistic interpretation for about 10 years, maybe a bit more.
Yeah. We found feathers on its ancestors, right? That was the logic.
We did. It was a perfectly reasonable hypothesis. We found these simple filamentous structures, proto-feathers on Dulong, which is a small early tyrannosaurid from China. And then came the big one, Utyrannus.
Utyrannus.
Also from China, a large tyrannosauroid, maybe 30 feet long, and it was covered in long, shaggy feathers. It looked like a giant woolly killer. It was an incredible find.
So the phylogenetic logic was, well, T-Rex is in the family, so T-Rex must be fluffy.
Exactly. It's a method called phylogenetic bracketing. If your ancestors had a trait and your close cousins had it, you probably have it too. The assumption was that T-Rex would be feathered. But the pendulum has swung back. We actually have skin impressions from T-Rex itself now, which is the best evidence you can get. There's a specimen nicknamed Wyrex from the Black Hills Institute. It preserves these small patches of skin from the tail, the hip, and the neck.
The big reveal.
Mosaic scales, tiny bumpy scales. No evidence of feathers in those patches.
So scaly like a traditional lizard or a crocodile?
Mostly, yes. The current thinking is that if feathers existed at all on an adult T-Rex, they were likely limited to the upper trunk, maybe like a shaggy cape along the back, or they were lost entirely. You have to remember T-Rex was massive. When you get that big, you have a heat problem.
You generate too much body heat just by existing, and you can't get rid of it fast enough.
Exactly. It's called gigantothermy. It's the same reason modern elephants and rhinos lost most of their hair. They live in warm climates and they're huge. A fur coat would be a death sentence. T-Rex likely lost its feathers as it evolved into a giant. It simply didn't need the insulation. In fact, feathers would have been a huge liability. It would have cooked from the inside out.
So a baby T-Rex might have been fluffy, but the adult was scaly.
That's a very plausible scenario. A little bit of downy fluff for insulation when you're small, which you shed as you grow into a 9-ton furnace.
Okay, so probably scaly. Now let's move to the face. When we draw dinosaurs, or see them in movies, they usually have that jagged crocodile-like smile where you can see the teeth even when the mouth is closed.
The lipless look, it's iconic. It's the monster look that everyone knows.
But there's a new study from 2023 that says maybe they have that lips, like fleshy lips.
This is the study by Thomas Cullen and his colleagues, and it made huge waves. They argue that T-Rex almost certainly had lips that covered those teeth when the mouth was closed.
Like a lizard, not a croc.
Precisely. Think Komodo dragon.
I have to admit, I struggle with the lips thing. The jagged, toothy grin is the T-Rex brand. Why are we trying to cover it up? Is this just paleontologists trying to be contrarian?
It's not just to be annoying, I promise. It comes down to the physics of enamel. Tooth enamel is the hardest substance in the body, but it is surprisingly fragile if it dries out.
It gets brittle.
It gets brittle and prone to cracking and chipping. Now look at crocodile. It has no lips, its teeth are exposed, but a crocodile spends half its life underwater. It has, for lack of a better term, explicit environmental hydration. Its teeth are always wet.
Right, makes sense.
T-Rex lived in the Hell Creek Formation. It wasn't aquatic. It was a terrestrial animal walking around in the air all day. If those massive teeth were exposed to the air 237, the enamel would dry out and become brittle.
And with how important those teeth were for crushing bone, remembering that hydraulic press analogy, you don't want them brittle. A cracked tooth is a big problem.
Exactly. The tool has to be maintained. If your main survival strategy is crushing bone with 57,000 newtons of force, a cracked tooth is a fatal flaw. So when Cullen led that study, they looked at the wear surface of the teeth. If the teeth were exposed, the outer side should be more worn down than the inner side due to exposure to the elements and abrasion.
Like weathering on the siding of a house. The sunny side gets more worn.
Perfect analogy. But they didn't find that. The wear on the enamel was even on both sides. That suggests the environment inside the mouth was stable and hydrated, meaning it was sealed by lips.
So when we picture T-Rex now, we shouldn't be picturing a crocodile smile. We should be picturing, what, a giant Komodo dragon.
That's the closest living analog. When a Komodo dragon closes its mouth, you don't see any teeth. It just looks like a massive muscular lizard. It's actually, and this is subjective, more unsettling.
I think so too.
It looks calm. It looks like a real animal, not a movie monster. Until it opens its mouth, you don't see the artillery. It hides the weapons.
That honestly makes it creepier to me. It makes it real. It's not always snarling.
It protects its tools. It's a professional.
Speaking of tools, we have to address the elephant in the room. Or maybe the tiny arms in the room.
The arms. The butt of every single dinosaur joke.
They are absurdly small. Sue is 40 feet long, and her arms are, what, a meter long? 3 feet?
They have a meter, yes. Just over 3 feet long. About the same size as a human arm, just on a 9-ton animal.
Why? Just why? If you are the ultimate predator, why do you have these vestigial little nubs?
Well, first off, despite the jokes, they weren't useless vestigial nubs. We've analyzed the muscle attachment points on the bones, and they were heavily muscled. The biceps alone could lift about 199 kilograms.
That's like 440 pounds with one bicep.
Right, so pound for pound, they were incredibly strong. But the range of motion was very limited. They couldn't reach their own mouth, they couldn't scratch their nose, they couldn't clap.
So what were they for? What's the best theory?
There have been so many theories over the years. Some say for mating, grasping a partner during copulation. Some say for pushing themselves up from a prone position, the push-up theory.
Yeah.
Getting up after a nap.
I could see that. Using them like little props.
Others say for holding on to struggling prey while the jaws did the real work, pinning a small animal against your chest.
But there's a newer hypothesis that I found really interesting. The safety hypothesis.
Yes, this is from Kevin Pedian in 2022. He proposed something really clever. He argued that the arms didn't necessarily have a use, but were reduced to keep them out of the way.
Out of the way of what?
The jaws of other T-Rexes.
Oh, well, that's dark.
Think about it. We have evidence they may have fed in groups. Imagine 3 or 4 9-ton animals with foot-long teeth converging on a carcass. It's a feeding frenzy. You have these massive, bone-crushing jaws snapping everywhere with 50,000 newtons of force. If you have long arms reaching in to grab meat, they're going to get bitten off.
Accidental amputation in a food fight.
Exactly. So natural selection might have favored shorter and shorter arms just to prevent catastrophic injury during group feeding. If your arm gets bitten off, you get a massive infection, you die. So shrinking the arms was a survival strategy for communal living.
It paints a very violent picture of their social lives. It's not just hunting, it's competing with your own family, your own group.
It was a violent world, no doubt about it.
Now, moving from arms to legs, we talked about chasing jeeps earlier. Could T-Rex actually run? Because in the movie, he's keeping up with a car. It's a sprinter.
Historically, people estimated speeds up to 45 miles per hour, but modern biomechanical modeling tells a very different story.
The buzzkill story.
A bit, yeah. If a 7 to 9 ton animal tried to run at 45 miles per hour, the stress on the bones would be catastrophic. Both feet would have to leave the ground in a true run and the force of landing. The leg bones would likely shatter under the impact.
So no sprinting. Not even a jog.
No sprinting. The modern consensus is that T-Rex was a power walker. Its efficient, sustainable walking speed was probably around 4.6 kilometers per hour, which is just under 3 miles per hour.
That's a brisk human walk. I could walk away from a T-Rex.
You could walk away from a cruising T-Rex, but it could likely push faster in short bursts, maybe up to 10 to 15 miles per hour, enough to surprise you. But the key wasn't top speed, it was efficiency. The tail played a huge role here.
How so? I always thought it's just a counterbalance.
It was, but it was an active counterbalance. It wasn't just dead weight dragging behind. It acted like a suspension bridge. It had massive ligaments running along the vertebrae that stored and released elastic energy with every step. We call it passive dynamics.
So it's not using muscle to hold the tail up. It's using tension, like a rubber band.
Correct. It's like a spring. Every time the tail swung one way, the ligaments stretched, and then they'd spring back, helping to power the next step. This made walking incredibly energy efficient.
So it's a Terminator. It doesn't run fast, but it just keeps coming and it will not stop.
Basically, it was a marathon walker. It could probably stalk prey for days without getting tired, just waiting for the right moment.
Wow. But was it clumsy? Could a small, quick dinosaur just run circles around it?
You'd think so, but probably not. While it wasn't fast in a straight line, it was surprisingly agile. Studies on rotational inertia, how hard it is to turn an object, suggest it could pivot very quickly.
How was that possible?
Because the mass was concentrated near the center of gravity, near the hips. The tail and head were large, but the heaviest part was in the middle. This allowed it to turn like a ballerina, a 9-ton ballerina, to face a flanking predator or a prey item trying to get behind it.
That image is fantastic and terrifying. Okay, so we have a power-walking, bone-crushing, lipped, scaly, super-sensing beast. But what did it eat? And how did it get it? This brings us to the great predator versus scavenger war.
The Jack Horner debate, yeah, this dominated the 90s and 2000s.
Right. Jack Horner, the famous paleontologist, spent years arguing that T-Rex was an obligate scavenger. It was too slow, he said, had tiny arms that couldn't grab anything, and had that great sense of smell like a vulture. Therefore, it just walked around finding dead stuff.
It was a provocative theory, and honestly, it was great for science because it forced us to really look at the evidence and not just assume it was a predator because it looks scary.
But the evidence has overwhelmingly come down on the side of
both, but definitely predator. It was an active hunter.
What's the smoking gun for predation? How can you prove it killed something?
Healed wounds. This is the best evidence you can have. We have a skeleton of an Edmontosaurus, a big duck-billed dinosaur, that has T-Rex bite marks on its tail vertebrae. but the bone has healed over the bite marks.
Which
Means the Edmontosaurus was alive when it was bitten and it escaped, and it lived long enough for its bones to heal. You can't hunt a carcass. A carcass doesn't get away and heal. If T-Rex were just a scavenger, that animal would be dead.
that seems pretty definitive. Case closed.
It's as close as we get. There's also evidence of battles with Triceratops. We found healed bite marks on Triceratops' frills and horns. We've even found broken T-Rex teeth embedded in the bone of prey that then healed around the tooth.
Ouch. That's a permanent souvenir from a bad day. Okay, so it hunted, but it wouldn't turn down a free meal, I assume.
Absolutely not. Like modern lions or hyenas or bears, if a T-Rex found a carcass, it would eat it. It was an opportunist, it hunted when it could, and it scavenged when it had to. Why waste energy and risk injury killing something if something else is already dead?
Makes perfect sense. And speaking of free meals, it also ate its friends.
Cannibalism, yes.
Yeah.
We have found T-Rex bones with deep gouges and tooth marks that perfectly match the size and spacing of T-Rex teeth.
A dog-eat-dog world.
Or Rex eat Rex. It likely wasn't hunting its own kind for food primarily, but if a rival died in a territorial dispute, or you just found a dead one, waste not, want not. It's a huge source of protein.
Now, you mentioned territorial disputes, but what about cooperation? Did they hunt in packs? The whole raptors in Jurassic Park thing, but with giant tyrannosaurs.
This is the dino gangs theory, put forward by paleontologist Philip Currie. It's based largely on bone beds of a relative called Albertosaurus, where many individuals of different ages were found buried together.
Suggesting they died together because they lived together.
That's the idea. And there are trackways in British Columbia showing 3 tyrannosaurs moving together in the same direction at the same speed.
So a wolf pack of T-Rexes.
That's the romantic idea, but the counter-argument is that it might have been more like Komodo dragons. Komodo dragons will congregate around a carcass and eat together, but they are not working together as a team. It's a mob, not a pack. They might even kill and eat each other in the process.
Mobbing sounds more fitting for those tiny safety arms we talked about. If you were in a mob, you wanted to keep your limbs close.
Exactly. If it's a chaotic feeding frenzy, small arms are an asset, not a liability. It all fits together.
Let's talk about growing up. Because a baby T-Rex wasn't just a small version of the adult, right?
Right.
They went through a huge transformation.
No, and this is crucial to understanding their dominance of the ecosystem. Their growth curve was S-shaped. They grew relatively slowly until about age 14, and then
Explosion.
the teenage growth spurt from hell.
Truly. In their teenage years, from about 14 to 18, they would gain an average of 600 kilograms. That's 1,300 pounds per year.
That's gaining a cow every year. That's gaining almost 5 pounds a day, every single day.
Essentially, they went from being a sleek, fast, mid-sized predator to a massive, bone-crushing tank in the span of just a few years.
And we can prove they were female sometimes. You mentioned a special bone tissue. We did. We found it. This is the famous B-Rex specimen, MOR 1125. When they analyzed a broken femur, they found medullary bone inside the marrow cavity.
And medullary bone is.
It's a calcium-rich tissue that female birds produce today only when they're ovulating. They use that calcium to make eggshells. It's a temporary tissue. Finding it is like finding a fossilized pregnancy test.
So that proved B-Rex was female and about to lay eggs.
And pregnant, yes. It was a huge discovery for sexing dinosaurs. Suddenly we had a confirmed female to compare to other skeletons.
But speaking of young T-Rexes, we have to open the can of worms that is Nanotyrannus.
Oh, the Nanotyrannus identity crisis. This is one of the biggest, most contentious debates in paleontology right now.
Okay, unpack it for us. What is a Nanotyrannus?
Yeah.
Or what was it supposed to be?
So for years, we found these skulls like the original Cleveland skull, CMNH7541 from the 1940s, and more recently, the Jane specimen. They are small, sleek, with more teeth than an adult T-Rex, and the teeth are more blade-like. For a long time, the consensus, led by people like Thomas Carr and Holly Woodward, was that these are just juvenile T-Rexes.
Just teenagers before the bulk up.
Exactly. The idea is called ontogenetic niche shift.
What does that mean?
It means the animal occupies a different ecological niche at different stages of its life. An adult T-Rex is a slow, bone-crushing tank that hunts Triceratops. A juvenile T-Rex, or what some people call Nanotyrannus, was a sleek, long-legged sprinter. It had blade-like teeth, not crushing teeth. It was hunting smaller, faster prey that the adults couldn't catch.
So a 14-year-old T-Rex isn't just a smaller adult. It's basically a different animal functioning in a different way in the same environment.
Precisely. And this explains why we don't find other medium-sized predators in the Hell Creek Formation. The baby T-Rexes were the medium predators. They filled that niche themselves.
That makes a lot of sense. So why is there a debate? Why doesn't everyone agree?
Because recently, there's been significant pushback. In 2025, a study by Zano and Napoli described a specimen called Bloody Mary.
Great.
It is. And they argue that the bone structure, specifically the growth rings in the bone, suggests that Nanotyrannus is a valid, distinct species that was adult or nearly adult at that small size. They argue the growth rings show it was slowing down its growth, reaching maturity, not in the middle of a massive growth spurt.
So there might have been a mini Rex running around alongside the giant one.
It's possible. They even suggested that Jane might be a different species entirely, Nanotyrannus liphaeus. But then just this year, Woodward and others fired back with more bone histology, saying, no, the growth curves still look like a juvenile T-Rex to us.
So is Nanotyrannus real?
The jury is very, very much still out. It's a fantastic scientific argument. It sounds like we are trying to identify a suspect from a photo of them when they were 12 and another when they were 40, and arguing if it's the same person. You need the photos from ages 15, 20, 25 to be sure. We're still missing those fossils.
I love that science isn't settled. It keeps it exciting. And speaking of unsettled science, let's talk about the number of species. Because recently, someone tried to tell us there were 3 kinds of T-Rex.
Yes, the 2022 paper by Gregorius Paul, he proposed splitting Tyrannosaurus rex into 3 species: T. rex, T. imperator, the emperor, and T. regina, the queen.
The king, the queen, and the emperor, that's a royal family. Based on what evidence?
Mostly on the stoutness of the femur, the thigh bone, and the tooth counts in the lower jaw. He argued that the variation we see in skeletons is too wide to be just one species. He saw a pattern. Older, deeper fossils tended to be robust with 2 incisors, and younger ones split into robust and gracile forms.
Did the scientific community buy it?
Not really. The pushback was immediate and pretty heavy. Other experts like Steve Bersot, Thomas Carr, and David Hone argued that the variation Paul was citing is totally normal for a single widespread population. Think about humans. Some of us are tall and lanky, some are short and stocky. We have different numbers of teeth sometimes.
So we're all Homo sapiens.
Exactly. They argued the data just didn't hold up to statistical scrutiny to justify splitting the most famous dinosaur species into 3. So for now, T-Rex stands alone as the one and only king.
That's the way. There was a curveball in 2024 from New Mexico. Tyrannosaurus macrensis.
Ah, yes. This one is really interesting. This fossil was found in the Hall Lake Formation in New Mexico. Originally, they dated the rocks and thought it was 6 to 7 million years older than any known T-Rex.
An ancestor, the grandfather of the king.
That was the thought, a direct ancestor. It had some subtle differences, too. A shallower, more slender jaw, blunter teeth in some ways. It wasn't quite the bone crusher that T-Rex was. It seemed like a good candidate for an earlier species, but then 2025 happened.
What happened in 2025?
A different team took another look at the dating of the rock layers, and their analysis suggested that the fossils might actually be the same age as T-Rex from up north in Montana and South Dakota.
Oh. And if it's the same age, those anatomical differences might just be...
Variation again, regional variation. Just a weird-looking T-Rex from the south. Or maybe a subspecies like a Bengal tiger versus a Siberian tiger. But the idea that it's a totally different ancient species is getting much harder to defend.
It seems like everyone wants to find the new T-Rex or a different T-Rex, but the original king keeps absorbing them back into its species.
It's resilient, both as a species and as a concept. Which brings us to the final point, really. This animal was a survivor.
It lived in a tough neighborhood.
The toughest. The Hell Creek Formation was a dangerous place. It was battling Triceratops, which is basically a walking tank with 3-foot-long spears on its face. It was dealing with Ankylosaurus, which is a living boulder covered in armor with a wrecking ball for a tail. And on top of that, T-Rex lived a live fast, die young lifestyle.
Now young. You said Sue was ancient at 30.
Very ancient. Most of them died within 6 years of reaching maturity. Once they hit that massive adult size, they burned out fast. There was high infant mortality, dangerous prey, disease, and constant combat with each other. We see skeletons with gout, with parasites, with dozens of broken and healed bones.
It wasn't an easy life being king.
No, but they were successful, unbelievably successful. They dominated the landscape of North America right up until the very end.
The asteroid.
The only thing that could stop a biological machine like that was a 6-mile-wide rock from space.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, why does T-Rex still hold the crown? After all this new science, after stripping away the movie myths, Why are we still so obsessed with it?
I think it's because it's the only dinosaur that is a household name by its full scientific binomial. You don't say, I like Canis lupus, you say, I like wolves. But everyone says Tyrannosaurus rex. It represents the absolute pinnacle of what evolution can produce in a terrestrial predator. It's huge, it's powerful, it's smart, it's sensory aware. It's not a simple movie monster, it's a triumph of evolution.
A triumph of evolution. I love that. So next time you see a T-Rex skeleton in a museum, don't just see a pile of old bones. See the 9-ton power walker with the lips and the super smell, feeling the vibrations of its prey through the ground as it stalks through the Hell Creek marshes, ruling the world.
And maybe keeping its tiny, two-fingered arms tucked in safely away from its friends.
Exactly. Keep those arms safe. Thanks for diving in with us on this. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. It's always fun to talk about the king.
And to our listener, here's a final thought. We spent all this time talking about T-Rex as a predator, a scavenger, a machine. But B-Rex, the pregnant female, proves they were also mothers. Imagine a 9-ton animal, a bone crusher, tenderly guarding a nest of eggs. The reality of this animal is always more complex than we imagine. Keep questioning the myths, because as we learned today, the reality is usually stranger and cooler than the fiction. See you on the next deep dive.